Hello and welcome to some special YouTube-only content from In the Money Media on our In the Money Media podcast channel. If you're watching this, we encourage you to subscribe. We encourage you to leave us a thought in the comments. Let us know what you think of these various stats we are going to be going through. We are looking at this upcoming Keeneland meet, one of the best meets of the year as far as I'm concerned, Keeneland Fall, through the lens of Race Lens. And to do that with us, we bring in Race Lens power user Matt Vagvolgyi. Matt, how much are you looking forward to this Keeneland Fall meet?
Always look forward to Keeneland open up. Whether it's spring or fall, but the fall for me is I think a little bit better because we hit a lull of tracks. I think from Saratoga kind of drops off a bit, and I'm kind of the days of good racing, in my opinion, in terms of what I play, kind of drops off a bit. So good to have Keeneland back in the fold. Good to have some really solid stakes racing, big fields. Always happy to see Keeneland get back on the docket.
You did some great work for us a few weeks ago when we did our Kentucky Downs meet preview, and we talked about how that track can be and frustrating at times, trying to figure out all the different things going on. And now we still dealing with Kentucky Downs in a way because we've got to figure out how those horses are going to perform when they get to Keeneland. But for you admittedly, you said Kentucky Downs, interested in it, took some shots there, but not always your bread and butter. Keeneland sounds like we're getting a little bit more back to that. Exactly.
Yeah, much more so. I think that's a part of, like you said a lot, Pete, about game selection, right? I mean, you have to be honest with yourself. That's why I think keeping track of your plays is incredibly important, right? Because you really start to find areas that you're good at. You start to find areas you're not good at. You got to be honest with yourself and start to remove the things that you're trying to force and make a profit where you're really not. And yeah, that's the case a lot for Kentucky Downs. I will say though, my criticism of Kentucky Downs with their horrible camera angles, I will take that back. I thought they did a great job this year, so I give credit where credit is due. But yeah, I think you're right there. I'm much more competitive and much more profitable at Keeneland than I am at Kentucky Downs, for sure.
And it's one of those things that's not necessarily meant to be a knock. It's certainly not a knock from my point of view, and I don't even think it's a knock from you on Kentucky Downs. Just as there are horses for courses, there are horse players for courses. But let's link these two thoughts by sharing our first slide that we have here. This was something I was interested in. Matt Bernier and I had a conversation the other day about the Kentucky Downs horses at Keeneland, and he was making the point that he feels like at the higher classes, they do pretty well, at least anecdotally. I wanted to look at it in aggregate. Walk us through what you found here. First, specifically, just all horses shipping in from Kentucky Downs, and then a trainer who might be a little bit of an exception to that.
Yeah, so kind of getting the 30,000-foot view of horses coming in from Kentucky Downs, and you can see here, I mean, a pretty good sample from last year. 267 starters. 8% winners, right? Not jumping off the page, obviously. 28% in the money, I think, is probably very concerning to me. And the negative 56% ROI also speaks to me as well. And you look at it from a 5-year standpoint, obviously that sample gets up there. Not much change in terms of the win and in the money percentage. The ROI certainly gets a little bit better there. But again, good sample. Not the best win percentage. Now, again, there are going to be several horses running in the same race, right? That's going to be included in this. So I want to make sure that that's pointed out. But again, I don't think it's a very good stat. And one of the things of being any kind of advantage player in anything is going against conventional thought. And I think the ROI takes this stat and goes against conventional thought. Because one thing I've mentioned before in the past, you can drill down to the details in any angle. There's a lot of short prices, Pete. I mean, pennies to the dollar horses that are finishing off the board. So it tells me that it's conventional thought, maybe, that folks are seeing that Kentucky Downs, being the kind of course that it is, should come in much more fit when they get back into, a place like Keeneland. And I think that's playing into this statistic here. So I think it kind of has some signal for me, Pete, when I look at what's the public thinking, what's the stats telling me. I think it's pretty clear here.
Yeah, it wouldn't make me against a Kentucky Downs horse I love, particularly in a higher class race. But I think the public clearly in aggregate is overreacting to all the money they're running for at Kentucky Downs. They're thinking maybe that gives them more an advantage than there is. And we were just talking about horses for courses. You can't get much different than the galloping, up and down turns, etc., at broader turn at Kentucky Downs versus the tight 2 turns at Keeneland. So it just makes sense. Certain horses would do well at one and maybe not as well at the other. I'm going to give you our special offer we've got coming from our friends at Race Lens in a minute. But first, let's talk about one. This is a very sensible exception to me. I always thought that Wesley Ward, my hypothesis from a few years back was that Wesley Ward, as speed oriented as he is, wouldn't do as well at Kentucky Downs. I'll tell you what, he actually does do well. I haven't pulled the numbers since post meet, but he does have plenty of winners there. But getting back, so that hypothesis was wrong, but it does point to the idea that maybe he'd still be a little bit better around a configuration where you'd expect speed to do even better. That's Keeneland. That, to me, is what these numbers are suggesting. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I mean, again, is it running to the windows and betting with both fists here? No, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I dig pretty deep to find a positive trainer here. And again, just 9 starts from last year. And then over the 5 years, I mean, 35 starts, still, I think a very good win percentage, remains positive in the ROI department there. So again, I had to dig a little bit deep there to find that, but that's the one that I did come up with that is positive and has a good percentage on the win end is Wesley Ward. And one other thing, Pete, just a point, you make a really good point about the purse structure at Kentucky Downs. I think that is a somewhat novice average allure to the past performances where it's like, well, this horse is coming out of a $1 million
race. Yeah,
and
how many $1 million races are there?
Yeah, exactly. It's like obviously this horse has to be in a much better position. I mean, again, I'm thinking more of like kind of the more novice type player, but again, that comes up and you start to draw into that, and then a bias starts to creep in. And you start to look at that horse a little bit differently. So I think that's a great point, Pete. We combine those factors in there, it kind of plays into the numbers that I think they're just being a little bit overbet.
Meet like Keeneland has more recreational money, more retail money in general than the average meet. So that sort of knee-jerk reaction to the purses could absolutely be playing into that stat. I promised you we'd get to our special offer from Race Lens. We'll get back to our slides momentarily, but I did want to let you know that if you go to inthemoneypodcast.com/racelens, you have an opportunity now to find out. The offers are very often changing, good new stuff coming on, and usually there'll be sort of 2 different tiers of offer, one aimed at completely new players and then others that are going to be geared towards returning players. That's the case right now. There's a promo code for 30% off all Race Lens and Equibase past performance subscriptions. You don't have to remember the promo code. You can just go to inthemoneypodcast.com/racelens. But in case you want to know, EQBBC30 is that one. And then new customers still have that opportunity to try a month of an unlimited subscription for just $1. That's the promo code RLBC1. You can also just go to the Equibase website, navigate over to Race Lens, but I highly recommend you check out these promo offers once again in themoneypodcast.com/racelens. I seem to have lost my pictures here momentarily, Matt, but bear with me. Yeah, we're back. I didn't want to have to pause and start again. We'll move on to our next stat that you have pulled from our friends at Race Lens. Talk us through what you found here.
Yeah, again, and what we've done in the past, Pete, is trying to look at some generalities, right? If you're new to Keeneland or just want to get a sense for what Keeneland was last year coming into this year, pulling different rail positions, and I looked at turf routes at Keeneland, drawing the rail, and then also kind of drawing that extreme outside. Drawing the rails, seems to be a place you want to be. And I won't say exactly the rail, and I'll touch on that at the end, but looking at this stat, drawn on the rail, 78 starters last year, 19% win, 40% of them in the money, very solid ROI of positive 77%. And then the second one to look at, I mean, a lot of times, even for big meets like Saratoga, like some of these stats really don't mean anything because they don't run many races that have 10 or more horses on a regular basis, where Keeneland is certainly has a nice sample here of 183 starters that are drawn either post 10 or beyond. Certainly drops off incredibly, right? I mean, 4% winners, just 14% of them in the money, tells me position is just about everything in these turf routes, and a negative 54% ROI, which you would expect with that kind of stat. What I've done, I'm not showing it here, but what I would say is, when you do get into Race Lens and I start to build out from the rail, so I'll have a rail stat like you're seeing now. Then I'll also go post 1 to 3, right? And I'll see like if that holds true there, and then 4 to 6. And what I've seen that post 1 to 3, if you're really getting that in those inside paths, once you get to post 4 and beyond is where the win percentage and the ROI tremendously falls off. So it tells me inside position in these turf routes are certainly going to be a positive thing to have here. So kind of wanted to give you the extremes on the rail as well as posted far outside.
Those certainly go together logically. And this is really interesting because I can remember years ago, and I'm talking 3-4 years ago, pulling stats and seeing evidence of, at least at times, that Keeneland turf rail being dead. Now, my hypothesis now is going to be maybe those were wetter meets than what we've had in the last couple of years or something, or maybe they've changed the way the drainage works. But there was definitely some signal in the idea, not unlike Churchill, that when the course got wet, it could get a little bit bogged down at the inside. That's not the case now. This would definitely make me want to upgrade horses drawn inside, downgrade a little bit, drawn outside. Again, nothing you're going to do automatically. If you love a horse, they can run through stats. The right horse can run through the right stat in the right situation, but it's going to be a way that I'm looking at the world. But I won't take it quite as seriously if we get a day where there's been a ton of rain. Do you buy that hypothesis? Do you accept that idea that it could be different depending on what the condition of the course is?
Oh, 100%. And again, I'll use Saratoga as another example where that changes this stat quite a bit. But what you can do in Race Lens is you could run this specifically to what the condition of the turf course is. So anything that's on the Equibase sheet is you have the ability to use as part of your angle, part of your research. So a lot of times I will have angles built for, firm, good, or, fast to muddy to sloppy. So whatever condition they have for the track in the Equibase final chart, you can actually put in here. So you could look at that, right? So that's another thing too. If you say, like you said, Pete, it's a very good example of what you just brought up. If you're starting to think in that direction, it's, hey, you know what? Let me throw that in there. Let me see if it changes it a bit. So it might give you signal in terms of, has there been a lot of rain, which is possible with Keeneland fall meets to have periods of longer rain that comes in that can change the course. So it's a way that you can drill down a little bit deeper and see if there's a big difference between the condition of the turf course versus just kind of a general statistic you're looking at here.
Let's move on to our third slide, where we're going to take a little bit of a look at turf sprints and turf routes and running style. This is interesting. This is a pretty big number you pulled up here. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, again, the top one, not the biggest sample size here, but wanted to give a flavor of pace and looking at run styles from horses too. I think is important to how horses appreciate different tracks and different surfaces. But looking at it from a turf sprint perspective and the EPs, that early presser designation, having the best late pace, right? So again, a horse that's forward, but also a horse that's got some finish as well, has had, certainly did well last year. 16 starters, 31% of them were winners. Over half of them were in the money and a very healthy ROI of a positive 34%. So again, looking for horses that are forward, looking for horses that can finish. Again, seems intuitive, but I think the important thing of statistics is actually looking at the numbers and proving yourself right or wrong. The turf route is a little bit different, right? You look at that early run style, horses that are up on the pace, much bigger sample here of 124 starters, 6% of them winners, just 22% of them in the money, and a negative 64% ROI. So certainly run style, different distances are certainly going to have an impact in terms of the success rates over the years, Pete.
That's so surprising in conjunction with that stat we just talked about how favorable the inside can be, because you would think early run style in the route race and inside post would go together. But I guess what that's telling us is you want to be saving ground. You want to be inside in that regard, but you don't want to necessarily be up on the front. Really, really interesting. How do you reconcile that in your mind? Just the same, does it send your brain in the same direction as mine, where I want to think about the next level of what those trips might look like? Or do you have another interpretation of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it plays a little bit, or at least my hypothesis plays a little bit to track configuration, right? And I hate to keep comparing it to Saratoga, but like sometimes these horses have to be used so much to get that position, right? Depending on where they're drawn, even inside, depending on how they can, get their position that they need and get over to the rail, get over to the inside. I think that plays into it a little bit. It certainly does at Saratoga in these kind of smaller, tighter turns. I think may play into it as well. But again, these are all things you can kind of dig a little bit deeper in to see. But that would be my guess. And one of the big things that I do outside of Race Lens, I predict settle position, right? Meaning when the position of race, and it changes for every single track, every single distance of where I project in the race, horses will settle, meaning the jockey's just along for the ride, right? They've done their position. They've gotten into where they need to be, and they're letting the horse run. Where are they positioned? And then I really start to dig in deeper from that point to the end of the race. So I found that to be a lot against in other circuits where, horses may look on paper to be, a type of horse you want to look at, but given the position they need to get into, might be overused, might not get into the exact spot that they need, and might be more troublesome. So again, but it's something you can dig a little bit deeper into and find out when you dig through it with the stats on the Race Lens.
That's next level, what we call race design, a term I stole from our buddy Duke Matisse, and we'll have to do a whole show on that at some point. But we're talking about statistics and how to use them in advance of this Keeneland upcoming meet, and we'll continue to do that looking at, we'll mention it again, Saratoga, and we'll mention it again, Santa Anita. Very, very interesting numbers you pulled here.
Yeah, and there's reasons why I gave both of these here. Obviously, you'll notice the Santa Anita sample size is small. Even though it's 20 starters from last year, it's like a 50% increase from the year prior. So my point is these horses are making this trip, or they did last year, and it seems that trend may continue this year. So, again, in 20 starts, 10% of them winners, 45% in the money, which is certainly a good stat there. But these horses are being bet. And it's another stat there when you drill into the details. These horses are being overbet. I don't think there was anything under 5-1, I think, if I remember correctly, but a negative 83% ROI certainly speaks to that. Like I said, small sample, but it's something I would pay attention to because that number has increased dramatically from last year versus the year prior. And then Saratoga over a longer sample, that 5 years, 158 starters, 20% of them winners, 44% in the money. And you're still positive here. You're positive 4% ROI. I think that's interesting too, because you've got horses that are skipping the Kentucky Downs. They're skipping the Churchill Downs, right? So they're coming in off these layoffs. And I think that is an interesting, kind of mental exercise for horse players of whether or not they're going to fire fresh. Just want to give some perspective on that for horses that do skip those high-end meets that come right into Keeneland, what their success has been over the years.
It makes sense. Trainer intent, such a huge thing. What I'm imagining from those Saratoga shippers is they picked a spot and are pointing to it more so than just dancing the dances that come up in the condition book at the various places. It doesn't surprise me that's positive. And yeah, the Santa numbers are really interesting. I mean, the 48% in the money to me suggests maybe a little bit of unluck there, but the ROI is so atrocious. I think that tells us a lot of these are being overbet. I'd be hesitant to be lumping on California shippers at short numbers. If I like one, I'm going to use it, but I'm going to be more inclined to have a backup or two. One more slide to talk about on the show here. And I want to take a look at these are a couple really fun ones because it's showing now the power of Race Lens and how you you get all the great tools to search for trainer stats, and you can also look at the breeding side of things.
Yeah, in the words of the great words of Michael Scott from The Office, I'll give you some general specifics here. Some things that jumped out to me that are not only common through Keeneland meets, but also if you're looking at opening day tomorrow, these stats actually play into a few races here. Asmussen does have a horse run, and he's the second choice on the morning line in the Grade 2 stake. Asmussen on the dirt, graded stakes, coming off an 8 to 30 day layoff, so a shorter layoff, kind of tells that's really his sweet spot, and that carries over from tracks across the country. 27 starters from the year, 30% of them winners. I like that. 60% of them in the money. Now the ROI is just absurd. That's not a typo. That is a 321% ROI. There are 2 bombs in that, but again, here's what I take of it. He's hitting at a relatively high clip. And also you're getting paid with some bigger bombs that are in the sample size as well. So something to pay attention to there. You're certainly not going to get that tomorrow, but something that Asmussen does incredibly well. And then kind of more of the basics. I mean, I'm probably looking at this and saying, well, yeah, of course, Matt. But I fall into, this is where Race Lens helps me. I want to show this as an example, especially with other meets around the country and also with Keeneland. You have a lot of these higher profile 2-year-old races, and being predominantly a data player, it pushes me away from 2-year-old races because there's no data, right? So looking at these and trying to drawing me into what type of, sire and dam profiles can I look at that maybe lead to playing a price. If you tap it for 2-year-old races only, turf routes, which I think are interesting. Again, 26 starters for the year, 20% of them winners, 58% in the money, and a very healthy positive 67% ROI. Just one of those things that draws into it. I believe there's 3 tap it 2-year-olds that are running turf routes on tomorrow's card. So again, some broader view of Keeneland through different pace projections and post positions and how the track generally runs, and give you some ideas that are more general as you get into tomorrow's card. So
great stuff. I love that. I really love the Tappet one, and it just makes so much sense. They need, typically the Tappets, what do they need? They need time, they need distance. Usually it's tricky with any kind of stats to separate Keeneland springs from Keeneland fall. But with that one, we know that's all Keeneland fall. We know it's all later in the year because they don't run races for 2-year-olds in the spring. So that's another one that matches the conventional wisdom, but is so striking. It would definitely make me into a spread race. I'm throwing in any Tappet going long on the turf there, probably going long in general as well. Again, the kinds of things you can drill down and check out for yourself. We're going to have some specifics of stakes races this weekend, also sponsored by Race Lens. Ben Kudla will be joining me. That'll be popping up on the channel soon. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our exclusive content. Go ahead and drop us a comment too. Which of these stats do you think is the most interesting? Do you have a stat or even just a hypothesis that you follow when it comes to the Keeneland meet? We want to hear from you down there for sure. Matt, you'll be back with me. We're going to be doing a couple things regarding Breeders' Cup. Can't wait for that. Really appreciate having you on today.
Thanks, Pete.
And for the last word, just remind you one more time, Equibase.com, navigate over to Race Lens. And if you want to check out the exciting promos that are cooking, in the moneypodcast.com/racelens.